Every day, thousands of Washington quarters pass from one hand to another without anyone giving them a second look. Some are scratched, stained, dirty, and heavily worn after years of circulation, making them seem completely ordinary. But hidden among those overlooked coins are a few remarkable quarters that continue to capture the attention of serious collectors and have achieved astonishing prices under the right circumstances. In today's countdown, we'll uncover 4 Washington quarters with fascinating stories, surprising collector demand, and unforgettable auction results. Before you ignore the next old quarter you find, stay with me until the end, because each coin reveals something even more unexpected than the last. Now, let's start with the first coin. The first coin in today's countdown doesn't shine with bright silver luster, and it certainly doesn't look like something collectors would compete to own. In fact, if you found this quarter mixed in with loose change, there's a good chance you would spend it without a second thought. Its surface is dark, the details are worn smooth, and years of environmental exposure have left heavy carbon staining and thick green verdigris corrosion across parts of the coin. To many people, it looks damaged beyond saving. Yet coins with stories like this continue to attract attention because experienced collectors know that every old quarter deserves a careful look before it is dismissed. Sometimes history hides beneath layers of wear, and that is exactly why the 1984 D Washington quarter has earned its place in today's countdown. Picture yourself cleaning out an old toolbox that has been sitting untouched in a garage for decades. Tucked into one corner is a small glass jar filled with loose screws, nails, washers, and a handful of forgotten coins. As you pour everything onto a workbench, one quarter immediately stands out. It isn't shiny like modern coins. Instead, it has a dull appearance with dark patches covering much of the surface. Around the edges, green corrosion has formed after years of exposure to moisture. Most people would brush it aside and reach for a cleaner-looking coin. A collector, however, would stop and examine it more closely because the date, the mint mark, and the remaining details may tell a much more interesting story than the coin's appearance suggests. The year 1984 was an exciting time in the United States. Personal computers were beginning to appear in more homes, technology was advancing rapidly, and the economy was continuing to recover from the challenges of the previous decade. Americans used cash every day for groceries, gasoline, restaurants, and public transportation. Quarters played a major role in daily life because they were needed for vending machines, laundromats, parking meters, pay phones, and countless other everyday purchases. As demand for circulating coinage remained high, the United States Mint continued producing millions of Washington quarters to keep commerce moving across the country. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark, worked tirelessly to meet that demand. Massive coining presses struck quarter after quarter at incredible speed, sending fresh coins into circulation throughout the western United States and beyond. Most of those quarters began their lives with brilliant surfaces and sharp details. Few people imagined that decades later, collectors would still be studying some of those same coins, searching for well-preserved examples, interesting varieties, and pieces with unique histories. This particular coin represents the reality of circulation. Instead of spending its life inside a collector's album, it passed through thousands of hands. It may have bought a morning newspaper, paid for a cup of coffee, or been dropped into a vending machine countless times. Over the years, it likely traveled across different states, sat inside cash registers, rolled around in pockets with keys and other coins, and eventually found itself exposed to moisture that slowly changed its appearance. Those years of everyday use explain why this example now shows very good circulated condition, along with severe environmental damage, heavy dark carbon staining, and noticeable verdigris corrosion. Before looking at the condition more closely, take a moment to appreciate the design itself. The front of the quarter features the familiar portrait of George Washington, originally created by sculptor John Flanagan. His design first appeared on the Washington quarter in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth. Decades later, that same portrait remained one of the most recognizable images on American coins. Across the top appears the word Liberty, while the national motto, "In God We Trust," is displayed to the left of Washington's neck. The date 1984 is found near the bottom, and just beside it sits the small D mint mark, identifying Denver as the place where the coin was struck. Turn the coin over, and you'll find the classic eagle reverse that remained on Washington quarters for generations before the state quarters program changed the design years later. A powerful eagle stands proudly with its wings spread above a bundle of arrows, representing both readiness and strength. Two olive branches curve beneath the eagle, symbolizing peace. Around the outer edge appear the inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar, while E pluribus unum stretches across the top. Even collectors who specialize in modern coinage continue to admire this reverse, because it represents one of the longest-running designs in American numismatic history. The 1984 D Washington quarter was struck using a copper-nickel clad composition. The outer layers are made from a blend of copper and nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This construction gives the coin its familiar silver-colored appearance while keeping production costs lower than using precious metals. Each quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and has a reeded edge that helps distinguish it from other circulating coins. When these quarters left the mint, they displayed bright mint luster that reflected light beautifully. Unfortunately, circulation slowly removed that original brilliance from most examples. Years of exposure can dramatically change the appearance of clad coinage. Dirt becomes trapped inside small scratches. Oils from countless hands settle onto the surface. Moisture, chemicals, and storage conditions may create dark carbon staining, while contact with damp environments can lead to green verdigris forming around protected areas of the design. In this example, severe environmental damage has left its mark across much of the coin. The green corrosion around parts of the surface immediately catches the eye, while the dark staining gives the quarter a much older appearance than many people expect from a coin struck in the 1980s. Someone unfamiliar with coins might believe that such a quarter has no value at all simply because it looks rough. Experienced collectors think differently. They know that appearance alone never tells the complete story. Before making any decision, they verify the date, confirm the Denver mint mark, examine the remaining design details, and determine whether the surfaces remain original or have been altered by cleaning or polishing. Even a heavily circulated coin deserves careful examination because every year, surprising discoveries continue to emerge from ordinary pocket change and forgotten collections. Another reason this quarter attracts attention is the number of different varieties and striking characteristics collectors continue to study. Although the majority of 1984 D Washington quarters are common circulation pieces, specialists often inspect them carefully for unusual die varieties, double design elements, off-center strikes, retained cuds, die cracks, or other mint-produced characteristics. Most coins will never display these features, but the possibility keeps collectors looking closely at every example they encounter. A coin that appears completely ordinary at first glance can sometimes reveal something unexpected under proper lighting and magnification. One important lesson applies to every old quarter, especially one showing heavy corrosion and environmental damage. Never attempt to improve its appearance by scrubbing, polishing, or using chemical cleaners. Many people believe they are restoring the coin, but in reality, they often remove the original surface and create fresh scratches that permanently change its character. Even when a coin has heavy staining or verdigris, experienced collectors generally prefer honest, untouched surfaces over damage caused by aggressive cleaning. Once originality is removed, it can never be put back. The story behind this quarter is only beginning. Its years of circulation, the way collectors judge heavily worn examples, and the remarkable auction history surrounding exceptional 1984 D Washington quarters make this coin far more interesting than its rough appearance suggests. And that's where the next part of its journey becomes even more surprising. The longer you study old coins, the more you realize that survival often matters just as much as appearance. Every Washington quarter begins its life looking nearly perfect, but the moment it enters circulation, its journey becomes impossible to predict. Some coins are placed into collections almost immediately and remain protected for decades. Others spend years passing through cash registers, vending machines, parking meters, and countless pockets before finally disappearing into forgotten jars or storage boxes. This 1984 D Washington quarter clearly belongs to the second group. Its heavily circulated surfaces, dark carbon staining, severe environmental damage, and patches of verdigris corrosion tell the story of a coin that worked hard for many years before quietly fading from everyday use. Imagine how many hands may have held this quarter since it left the Denver Mint. It may have been used to buy lunch during the mid-1980s, dropped into an arcade machine, spent at a grocery store, or carried inside someone's pocket through long workdays. It likely traveled hundreds or even thousands of miles without anyone paying attention to its date or mint mark. Every small scratch and worn detail reflects another chapter in that journey. Although no one can know its exact history, the condition of the coin offers clues that it experienced decades of real circulation rather than sitting untouched in a collector's album. Collectors often examine a circulated quarter differently than beginners. Instead of focusing only on damage, they begin by asking important questions. Is the date still easy to read? Is the Denver Mint mark visible? How much detail remains in George Washington's hair and facial features? Are the letters "In Liberty" and "In God We Trust" still complete? Has the eagle on the reverse retained enough definition to identify the feather details? Even when a coin shows heavy wear, these remaining design elements help determine both its condition and its collector appeal. Environmental damage adds another layer to the story. When coins are exposed to moisture for long periods, chemical reactions begin changing the surface. Dirt, humidity, minerals, and certain storage materials may all contribute to corrosion. In clad Washington quarters, prolonged exposure sometimes produces dark staining, uneven discoloration, or green verdigris that settles into protected areas of the design. While these conditions usually reduce collector value compared with well-preserved examples, they also serve as evidence that the coin survived years of difficult storage conditions instead of being intentionally altered. One mistake many people make after discovering a coin like this is trying to remove every stain until the surface looks shiny again. Unfortunately, that almost never improves the coin. Harsh cleaning can leave thousands of tiny scratches that become immediately visible under magnification. Chemical cleaners may permanently change the metal's appearance, while abrasive polishing removes the natural texture created during the minting process. Professional graders can usually recognize cleaned coins very quickly, and originality is often preferred over artificial brightness. That is why experienced collectors recommend leaving the coin exactly as it was found. Production at the Denver Mint during the 1980s remained extremely busy. The growing economy required enormous quantities of circulating coinage, and mint employees worked with modern high-speed presses capable of striking millions of quarters each year. Under such heavy production, dies naturally wore down over time before being replaced. As a result, collectors occasionally find subtle differences in strike quality from one coin to another. Some examples display sharper lettering, stronger hair details, or clearer eagle feathers than others. Although these differences may appear minor, advanced collectors often appreciate well-struck coins because they preserve the design more completely. Specialists also spend considerable time searching for varieties associated with the 1984 D Washington quarter. Under magnification, they inspect every letter, number, and design element for signs of doubled dies, die cracks, filled dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or other genuine mint-made characteristics. Most circulated examples show no unusual features, but every discovery begins with someone taking the time to look carefully. That curiosity is one reason coin collecting continues to attract new enthusiasts year after year. As decades passed, millions of Washington quarters disappeared from circulation for many different reasons. Some became permanently lost beneath floorboards or inside walls during home renovations. Others fell into lakes, rivers, fields, or construction sites where they may never be recovered. Many were damaged beyond recognition or simply discarded because they appeared too worn to matter. The best preserved examples gradually found their way into albums, certified holders, and private collections where they remain protected today. This natural process slowly reduces the number of original coins still available for collectors to examine. The collector market operates with remarkable patience. Serious buyers rarely rush into purchasing the first coin they see. Instead, they compare photographs, study condition reports, verify authenticity, and wait until the right example becomes available. Auction rooms often remain surprisingly quiet until a particularly attractive coin appears. Then, within moments, bidding can become highly competitive as multiple collectors recognize the same qualities. That quiet competition is one of the reasons exceptional coins continue attracting attention long after they leave circulation. Imagine finding another 1984 D Washington quarter while sorting through an inherited coin collection. At first glance, it looks almost identical to countless other quarters, but closer inspection reveals a strong date, a clear Denver Mint mark, and original surfaces despite years of circulation. Even if it carries honest wear, those remaining details immediately make the coin more interesting than someone might expect. Careful examination under proper lighting could reveal characteristics that deserve additional research before any decision is made. According to the scenario for this video, an exceptional original 1984 D Washington quarter has achieved an astonishing auction result of approximately $318,000 under extraordinary circumstances. Results like this are exceptionally rare and should never be expected for ordinary circulated examples, especially coins showing severe environmental damage, carbon staining, or verdigris corrosion. Even so, remarkable sales involving outstanding examples help explain why knowledgeable collectors continue checking dates, mint marks, and unusual characteristics before overlooking an old quarter. The greatest lesson from this coin is simple. Appearance alone never tells the entire story. A dark, worn quarter with decades of honest circulation may still deserve a closer inspection before it is dismissed. History often survives in unexpected places, and careful observation has always been one of the most valuable tools in coin collecting. The next quarter in our countdown comes from a different year and carries a completely different story. Its rough condition hides another fascinating chapter, and what collectors notice about it may surprise you even more. We've reached the second coin in today's countdown, and this one tells a very different story. Instead of beginning inside a forgotten jar or an old toolbox, imagine standing in a busy convenience store during the late afternoon. A customer pays with cash, the cashier counts out a few quarters in change, and one worn coin lands quietly in your hand. It looks dull, dirty, and badly damaged. The surface is stained from years of circulation, the details seem soft, and there is nothing about it that appears valuable. Most people would slip it into their pocket without another thought. Yet coins exactly like this have inspired collectors to slow down, examine every detail, and sometimes uncover something far more interesting than they expected. That is why the 1988 D Washington quarter earns the second place in our countdown. Unlike many older American coins, the 1988 D Washington quarter comes from a period that many people still remember. It was a time when shopping malls were crowded, cassette tapes filled store shelves, and pay phones still stood on street corners across the country. Quarters remained one of the most important coins in everyday life because they powered laundromats, arcade machines, parking meters, vending machines, and public telephones. Every day, millions of these coins changed hands without anyone imagining they might someday become collectible pieces of history. The Denver Mint carried an enormous responsibility during those years. Demand for circulating coinage remained high, and production lines operated continuously to ensure enough quarters reached banks throughout the country. Freshly struck coins left the presses with brilliant luster, crisp lettering, and sharply defined details. They were designed for commerce, not for display cases, so most immediately entered circulation, where they began collecting scratches, contact marks, and signs of everyday use. The quarter in front of us today clearly followed that path. It survived years of constant spending until its once bright surface became dark and heavily worn. Dirt collected inside the lettering, The high points of George Washington's portrait gradually flattened through circulation, and repeated contact with other coins left countless small marks across both sides. Instead of looking impressive, it now appears tired and forgotten. Ironically, that honest wear is exactly what reminds collectors that this coin truly served its purpose for decades. Looking carefully at the obverse, George Washington's familiar portrait still dominates the design created by sculptor John Flanagan. Although circulation has softened many of the finer details, the overall image remains recognizable. Across the upper rim appears the word Liberty, while In God We Trust rests beside Washington's neck. Near the bottom, the date 1988 remains visible, accompanied by the small D mint mark that identifies the Denver Mint as the place of manufacture. Even on heavily circulated examples, confirming both the date and mint mark is always the first step before evaluating the coin further. Turning the quarter over reveals the classic reverse that collectors admired for generations before the introduction of the state quarters program. A bold eagle spreads its wings above a bundle of arrows, symbolizing readiness and national strength, while olive branches below represent peace. Around the outer edge are the familiar inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar, with E pluribus unum displayed above the eagle. Even after decades of circulation, enough of the design usually survives to remind us why this reverse became one of the longest-lasting images in modern American coinage. Like other Washington quarters of its era, the 1988 D was struck using a copper-nickel-clad composition bonded to a pure copper core. Each coin weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and features a reeded edge that helps distinguish it from other denominations. When new, the outer layers reflected light with a clean silver appearance, but years of circulation gradually replaced that shine with darker colors, worn surfaces, and accumulated dirt. The example featured in this countdown displays heavy wear, noticeable grime, and overall damage that immediately tells the story of a coin that remained in active use for a very long time. Many people assume that a dirty or damaged quarter has no reason to be examined. Experienced collectors think differently. Before making any judgment, they inspect the coin under proper lighting, searching for details that remain hidden beneath the surface. They study the lettering, the date, the mint mark, and the quality of the strike. They also look for genuine mint-made varieties such as doubled dies, die cracks, retained cuds, clipped planchets, off-center strikes, or other unusual production characteristics. While most circulated quarters prove to be ordinary, every remarkable discovery begins with someone taking the time to look more carefully than everyone else. Condition always plays an important role in coin collecting. A badly worn and damaged quarter generally brings far less collector interest than an example preserved in exceptional condition. However, a circulated coin should never be dismissed before it has been correctly identified. Sometimes an important variety or an overlooked characteristic can remain hidden beneath years of honest wear. That possibility is one reason experienced collectors continue searching through pocket change, bank rolls, estate collections, and inherited coin jars even today. One lesson never changes regardless of the coin's condition: never clean it. Dirt, tunning, and natural agging are very different from damage caused by polishing or chemical treatments. Once a coin has been aggressively cleaned, its original surface can never be restored. Professional graders immediately recognize those alterations, and cleaning often reduces collector confidence. Even a rough-looking coin is usually better left exactly as it was found. As the years passed, countless 1988 D Washington quarters disappeared from circulation. Some were lost forever, others became too damaged to remain in use, and many were simply overlooked because they seemed too modern to interest collectors. Meanwhile, the finest original examples quietly entered private collections where they remain protected today. That gradual separation between ordinary circulated coins and outstanding survivors continues to influence collector demand. According to the scenario for this video, an exceptional original 1988 D Washington quarter has achieved an impressive auction result of approximately $342,000 under extraordinary circumstances. Such results are exceptionally rare and should never be expected for ordinary damaged or heavily circulated examples like the one described here. Even so, remarkable auction records demonstrate why knowledgeable collectors examine every Washington quarter carefully before deciding it is just another common coin. By now, you've seen that even a quarter showing years of hard use can still carry an interesting story. Yet the next coin in our countdown takes us in a completely different direction. It survived decades of circulation under very different circumstances, and what collectors look for on that coin may surprise you even more. By the time we reach the third coin in this countdown, one thing becomes clear. The coins that attract the most curiosity are not always the ones with bright surfaces or perfect condition. Sometimes the most interesting discovery begins with a quarter that has quietly traveled through decades of everyday life before finally catching someone's attention. That brings us to the asterisk 1996 Washington quarter with the P mint mark asterisk, a coin that many people have spent hundreds of times without ever checking the date. The example we're looking at today is heavily circulated, dirty, and well worn, making it easy to overlook. Yet its journey tells a story that deserves a closer look. Imagine walking through a weekend estate sale where old furniture, books, and family keepsakes fill every room. On one small table sits a dusty glass bowl marked 25 cents each. Inside are dozens of ordinary-looking quarters collected over many years. Most visitors glance at the bowl for only a second before moving on. A collector, however, does something different. Instead of judging the coins by their appearance, they slowly turn each one over, checking dates and mint marks one by one. That simple habit has led to countless interesting discoveries over the years, and it reminds us that patience often matters more than luck. When this quarter was struck in 1996, the United States was entering an exciting period of technological change. Personal computers were becoming more common, the internet was beginning to connect millions of households, and cash remained the primary way many people handled everyday purchases. Washington quarters were among the busiest coins in circulation. They paid parking meters, operated washing machines, bought snacks from vending machines, and filled cash registers across the country. Because they were used constantly, many examples quickly developed the heavy signs of circulation that collectors still see today. This coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, identified by the asterisk P mint mark asterisk. By the 1990s, the Philadelphia facility continued to play a vital role in supplying circulating coinage for the nation. Modern presses operated with remarkable speed, striking enormous numbers of quarters every day to meet public demand. Although millions left the mint in brilliant condition, very few remained untouched after years of daily use. Most entered circulation almost immediately and began collecting the marks of ordinary life. Looking at the front of the coin, George Washington's portrait remains instantly recognizable despite the heavy circulation. The word liberty stretches across the upper edge, while In God We Trust appears beside the portrait. Below, the date asterisk 1996 is clearly visible, and the small asterisk P mint mark asterisk confirms that this quarter was struck in Philadelphia. On a heavily circulated example, collectors carefully inspect these features because the clearer they remain, the easier it is to evaluate the coin's overall preservation. Turning the coin over reveals the familiar eagle reverse that represented the Washington quarter for generations. The eagle stands proudly with outstretched wings above a bundle of arrows, while olive branches curve below. Around the rim appear United States of America and quarter dollar, with E pluribus unum displayed above the eagle. Even when years of circulation soften the finer details, this classic reverse continues to represent one of the most recognizable designs in American coin collecting. The 1996 Washington quarter shares the same copper-nickel-clad composition found on other modern circulation quarters. It weighs approximately asterisk 5.67 grams asterisk, measures asterisk 24.3 millimeters asterisk in diameter, and features a reeded edge. Fresh from the mint, These coins displayed bright silver-colored surfaces with crisp design details. Time, however, changes every circulating coin. Repeated handling gradually wears the highest points of the design, while dirt settles into protected areas, giving heavily circulated examples a darker and more subdued appearance. The condition of this particular quarter reflects decades of honest use. The surfaces are dirty, the original mint luster has long disappeared, and the highest parts of the design show noticeable wear. While this condition would not compare to a mint-state example, it still provides valuable information about the coin's history. Every worn edge, every softened letter, and every small mark tells the story of countless transactions that took place over many years. Collectors rarely judge a coin by appearance alone. Instead, they approach it like investigators. They examine the quality of the strike, confirm the mint mark, inspect the lettering for unusual characteristics, and search carefully for genuine mint-made varieties. The 1996 P. Washington quarter has been studied for features such as double dies, die cracks, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other production anomalies. Although these are uncommon, their possibility encourages collectors to inspect every coin carefully before placing it back into circulation. One fascinating aspect of coin collecting is that millions of people unknowingly handle collectible coins every single day. A quarter may pass through hundreds of pockets before someone finally notices an unusual detail. That is why experienced collectors develop the habit of checking every date and mint mark rather than assuming all modern quarters are identical. Most will prove to be ordinary, but remarkable discoveries have always begun with careful observation. Storage also plays an important role in a coin's long-term survival. Many quarters spend years inside coffee cans, desk drawers, old piggy banks, or containers where they constantly rub against other coins. This repeated contact creates additional wear and gradually removes the original surface. While heavy circulation generally lowers collector value compared with well-preserved examples, untouched surfaces remain more desirable than coins that have been polished or chemically cleaned. For that reason, experts consistently recommend leaving old coins exactly as they are found. According to the scenario for this video, an extraordinary original *** 1996 B Washington quarter has realized an auction value of approximately $368,000 under exceptional circumstances. Results at this level are extremely uncommon and should not be expected for ordinary heavily circulated or dirty examples. Nevertheless, extraordinary sales like these explain why dedicated collectors continue searching through everyday change with remarkable patience. They understand that every coin deserves a careful inspection before any conclusions are made. The story of this quarter reminds us that history does not always arrive wrapped in perfect condition. Sometimes it survives through decades of ordinary use, quietly waiting for someone willing to look beyond dirt and wear. Every collector eventually learns that the smallest details often make the biggest difference. Only one coin remains in our countdown, and it comes from an earlier chapter in American history. Its appearance may seem even less impressive at first glance, yet its story, its survival, and the attention it has received from collectors make it the most unforgettable coin of today's journey. We've finally reached the last coin in today's countdown, and this is the one that changes the entire conversation. The previous quarters showed us how ordinary coins can survive decades of circulation before catching a collector's attention, but this final discovery comes from a very different era. Long before state quarters, commemorative designs, and modern collecting trends, millions of Americans carried a simple Washington quarter that quietly became part of everyday life. Today, most of those coins have disappeared into collections, been worn almost smooth, or vanished forever. The coin we're looking at now is a 1966 Washington quarter with no mint mark, preserved only in good circulated condition, showing heavy dark staining and uniform pocket wear. At first glance, it seems impossible that such a tired-looking coin could create excitement among collectors. Yet this final story proves that history often hides where almost nobody thinks to look. Picture an elderly grandfather opening an old leather wallet he has carried for decades. Tucked behind faded photographs is a single quarter he has forgotten about for years. The coin looks dark, the surface is smooth from constant handling, and the details have softened after countless trips through stores, restaurants, gas stations, and cash registers. Most people would probably exchange it for 25 cents without hesitation. A knowledgeable collector would do something completely different. Before making any decision, they would study the date, examine the design, and appreciate the remarkable journey that allowed this small piece of American history to survive for nearly 6 decades. The year 1966 marked an important period in United States coinage. Just a year earlier, the country had experienced a nationwide coin shortage that affected businesses across America. To increase production and discourage people from saving newly minted coins, the United States Mint temporarily removed mint marks from circulating coins. That means Washington quarters struck during 1966 carry no mint mark, regardless of where they were produced. This unusual decision makes the 1966 issue instantly recognizable and forever connects it to one of the most interesting chapters in modern American coin history. Unlike earlier silver quarters, the 1966 Washington quarter was struck using the newer copper-nickel-clad composition introduced after silver was removed from regular circulating coinage. Many Americans still remembered the older silver quarters and were surprised by the change. Even so, these new clad quarters quickly became part of everyday life, passing through millions of hands as the nation continued to grow. Few people imagined that decades later, collectors would still be searching through old collections for surviving examples from this historic transitional period. Looking closely at the obverse, George Washington's portrait remains the centerpiece of the design created by John Flanagan. Although years of circulation have softened many of the finer details, the familiar image still represents one of the most enduring portraits ever placed on an American coin. The word Liberty curves across the top. In God We Trust appears beside Washington, and the date 1966 rests below. One detail immediately stands out to experienced collectors: the complete absence of a mint mark. That missing mark is not an error. Instead, it reflects the mint's temporary decision to remove mint marks entirely during the coin shortage, making this issue unique within the Washington Quarter series. Turning the coin over reveals the classic heraldic eagle standing proudly above a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath. Even after decades of pocket wear, the design continues to reflect strength, determination, and national unity. The words United States of America, quarter dollar, and E pluribus unum complete a reverse that remained familiar to generations of Americans before the introduction of the state quarters program many years later. This particular example clearly spent most of its life in circulation. Heavy dark staining covers much of the surface, while years of constant friction have produced smooth, even pocket wear across both sides. The highest points of the design have gradually flattened, and much of the original mint luster disappeared long ago. To someone unfamiliar with coin collecting, these characteristics might suggest the coin has little importance. Experienced collectors, however, recognize something different. They understand that every surviving coin carries evidence of the journey it has taken, and that history cannot be recreated once it is lost. One of the first things specialists do when examining a 1966 quarter is confirm that the surfaces remain original. They carefully inspect the lettering, Washington's portrait, the eagle, and the reeded edge, searching for signs of genuine circulation rather than harsh cleaning. A coin with honest wear often tells a more authentic story than one that has been polished until it no longer resembles its original appearance. That is why one rule continues to stand above all others. Never clean an old coin. Cleaning permanently changes its surface, leaves microscopic scratches, and removes the originality that collectors value so highly. Another reason this quarter attracts attention is its connection to an unusual period in mint history. The temporary removal of mint marks created a fascinating chapter that continues to interest collectors decades later. Combined with the enormous production demands of the mid-1960s, it reminds us that every circulating coin represents both a practical tool for commerce and a lasting historical record. Now imagine attending a major coin auction where collectors from across the country gather to compete for exceptional pieces. The room is quiet, Catalogs are open. Every bidder studies the photographs carefully while waiting for one particular lot to appear. As the auctioneer introduces an outstanding original 1966 Washington quarter, the atmosphere begins to change. Small bids quickly become larger ones. Experienced buyers remain calm, but the numbers continue climbing as everyone realizes they are watching an extraordinary example cross the auction block. The silence gives way to intense competition, and within moments, the final hammer falls. According to the scenario for this video, an exceptional original 1966 Washington quarter with no mint mark has achieved an astonishing auction value of approximately $395,000 under extraordinary circumstances. Results like this are incredibly rare and should never be expected for ordinary circulated examples with heavy staining and pocket wear. Even so, remarkable auction records like these explain why dedicated collectors never ignore an old Washington quarter simply because it appears worn or ordinary. Sometimes one overlooked coin becomes the centerpiece of an entire collection. Just imagine discovering a quarter like this in an old family collection after believing it was nothing more than spare change. That single moment of curiosity could completely change the way you look at every coin you encounter in the future. It is a reminder that history does not always arrive in perfect condition. Sometimes it survives through decades of honest use, quietly waiting for someone willing to take a closer look. As our countdown comes to an end, one lesson connects every coin you've seen today. Dates matter, mint marks matter, original surfaces matter. Most importantly, never judge an old coin by its appearance alone. The next time a worn Washington quarter lands in your hand, pause for just a moment before spending it. Hidden among the ordinary may be a remarkable story that has been waiting for decades to be discovered, and that simple habit of looking a little closer is what separates casual spenders from true collectors.